So I'm really delighted to introduce Nicola Coe, who is also our Artist of the Month for, where are we? February, March, for March.
I know it's not
So,
long.
so her work has gone up on the website. We're pre-recording this because Nicola can't be with us today at First Friday. So this is a recorded interview. Nicola, welcome. Um,
Thank you.
and welcome to being Artist of the Month as well for
Thank
March.
you.
And although people can find out more about your work on the website, I just wondered if you wanted to kick off. You said you had some pieces there you want to show us. Do you want to just kind of talk about what you're working
Yeah.
on and
Um,
how you work and how you make things and that?
okay. So I haven't got much with me at the moment because I've got an exhibition on at the moment with a lot of work in. But I just bought an example of a typical nest piece that I work on. Um, Nests fascinate me. Um, I mean, I think I'm an artist, but I'm also a naturalist, really.
Yeah.
And I think it's been a long journey to here, but throughout the changes in art and styles, nature is being prominent, and as well as having a garden which I allowed nature to run riot in, so that's also big influence. Um, the nest pieces are they're a chance for me to honour the
Mm.
amazing abilities of a bird with one beak
Mm.
to create something in this sort of, well, better than I can, put it that way. And I think also that a lot of my work I try to show the viewers something they may not realise about nature. And although people have this sort of childhood vision of a nest in their head, which is either a pile of twigs in a tree, or I don't think they really enjoy the complexities of nests and what's out there and how they make them and why they make them. So I suppose, as well as enjoying the beauty of them, I'm also trying to sort of gently educate an idea. This one's kind of was on a big piece of barbed wire that came down onto a plinth. I've started using a lot of barbed wire because I want to talk about in my work the loss of hedgerows that are happening. So, and this one's got wire wrapped round as well. It's kind of symbolising that if we're not careful, all our hedges will be wire fences.
Just tell me what part of the world are you in?
I'm in Suffolk.
So
So
is Suffolk, yeah, is Suffolk a county where a lot of hedgerows have been ripped out, still being ripped out?
they're not being ripped out, but they're being flailed a
Right,
lot
sure.
by the farmers. Obviously, there's some farmers that are attempting to regenerate, but most of the hedgerows around me are pitifully thin, see-through, no berry, no blossom, flailed to the same height every winter, just really for no reason. Some of them I can understand because they are very close to the roads and they need, but some it's in the middle of a field, and I honestly think sometimes the farmers are bored in the winter and they've been given a budget to cut a hedge and they just, so I am aware that regeneration needs to take place, and it is happening slowly. But I'm also aware that I think people come into the countryside and see a nice green hedge and a nice green field and think it's wonderful for nature, and actually it's not.
No.
I mean, I'm surrounded by arable farming,
Mm.
but in all honesty, it's a desert most of the
Well,
time.
yeah, I am too, and
Yeah,
you know, although it's a mixed farm, it's not just arable, so
yeah,
it's more varied, but nevertheless, as you say, the
yeah,
fields that are in arable use are incredibly overworked. No
yeah.
field boundaries, you know, none
No,
of those things, and
no field boundaries, sprayed. Um, as soon as the crop's taken out, the next crop's back in it. So
exactly, yeah, yeah,
no time for seed to be left for the winter. Um, shooting the wood pigeons, you know. Yeah, it looks pretty to someone else, but
mm.
so I
Anyway,
think,
I interrupted you talking about nests, so
yeah.
sorry, didn't.
So, well, this one, I've got another one here. My next big project is going to be an exhibition at the Cly and Salthouse Marsh Reserve in Norfolk. And I've been working on a self-led residency where I sort of did a year of observation on which birds I actually saw nesting and then tried to make pieces in response, with in mind at the end of it also highlighting how the reserve has to be really managed by human hand.
Mm.
Because that's another thing. I think people see nature reserves as being beautiful because they're just left to be wild, but actually they're not, because it would just become woodland. And sort of mirroring that to help, hopefully, the right people thinking, and I will have wording about this in the exhibition. Oh, well, this needs managing. Perhaps I can go home and manage my
Mm.
little reserve.
Mm.
So most of the works are too big for me to have brought in. So I've done works on coot and avocet,
Mm.
ringed plover. But one of them is great tit because on the reserve they've got swift boxes with calls being played. Not one swift's gone near them, but a great tit did.
Right.
And the warden really kindly got the nest out for me at the end of the season, but we think that they were unsuccessful because he found the female bird had died in the box. So
Right.
the nest hadn't been fully formed. But so I made my little homage to the great tit. So I've used an old tea caddy
Yeah.
as the idea of nest box. And then, so in there, I've recreated a great tit nest using some of the material from the actual nest. And I've recreated a clay egg that I've painted.
Yeah.
So I'm hoping it's sort of, I can't decide whether to put a hole here.
Mm. Yeah. Well,
But I'm worried.
it's
I
interesting,
don't
isn't it?
want
Yeah.
it to be too obvious, but it is the idea of a nest box and that they will use other
Yeah.
things. But this one, I don't know where the camera is.
Well, yeah, we can see it quite well
And then
actually,
there's,
and just see the
I've
net.
only used
Yeah.
one, yeah. So what was interesting is there's a little bit of binding twine, the
Yeah.
orange,
Which is
in the
everywhere,
net.
of course. Yeah.
Yeah, and they'd used a bit of that, so I've put that in there, and I think it's hair of some kind. It's not a horse, so it's either hair,
Right.
rabbit hair, or dog hair.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's kind of the smallest one, and then they're all going up slightly bigger.
I think if you put a hole in it,
Yeah,
I think you're right. I think it might be too
corny.
It's a little bit more. It's a little bit more like a coffin now.
Yes.
It has a much more of a feeling of a kind of memento mori about
Yeah,
it.
exactly.
And I think if you put that, it feels
And
like.
I quite like the idea of it being like a hidden view because of what you can't see, and then
So
I might display it slightly like
just slightly open.
Yeah,
That's nice. Yeah.
yeah. But all of them actually, because some of the nests that I've had to make the birds don't actually make a nest. So, for instance, with the avocets, they just make a scrape. I've had to think outside the box for a lot of them. So I started getting, so you know that I make, I work with eggs as well.
Yes, yeah.
But this time I had to construct eggs. I wanted them to be exactly the right size for the species. So I got lots of information, and I've used lots of my chicken eggs, but I've been measuring each one with calipers until I've got them the right size and shape. But where I couldn't, with this great tit, I made little clay eggs and then painted them. And oh God, painting an egg to look like, it's just been. So normally, I use inks to stain the eggshell, and the eggshell absorbs it. But this is different. This is making something look. The nests don't look realistic. They're more a sort of. I will put them up on Instagram soon, but I wanted to wait till the exhibition.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
But they're more a sort of taking a few ideas. But one egg inside, I wanted it to be as near to the real. But nightmare.
You've only got yourself to blame there, guys.
I know, and I've got all these different books. Most of the books, there's one brilliant egg book that's new, but obviously because nests and egg collecting was such an issue in the last century, there's very few books on it. So most of them are like the old observers or books from
sure.
So I'm looking at these tiny illustrations.
Yeah, although they're amazing, those books, weren't they?
I've got loads.
Yeah,
I love them.
Yeah, because you said in you said somewhere that you collect old
they're all. Yeah, I've got most of them. I've got all the observers and the ladybird books. I keep finding ones. They're really written pre-First World War, and they're quite interesting. They're quite interesting in one way. They do not have avocet in them because avocet was actually extinct.
Right.
But they say things like, "Oh, there's so many yellow hammers and there's turtle doves all over the place," and you think, "Oh,
yeah."
And they're such a nuisance, they write.
Let's get rid of them.
They're quite interesting because they've often got inscriptions in. They were given as gifts to children at Christmas.
I think
they probably thought, great,
Yeah, still, it probably said, I'm sure it says something about our relationship with the natural world. That those books for kids are no longer really published, at least not in the way they were. I mean, those observer books and the ladybird books were completely ubiquitous, weren't they?
Yeah,
and actually remarkably good. I know,
I got this one the other day.
Yeah,
but it's not the normal type. It's for early readers, and it just says things. I can't think where it is, but it's just the way it's written. Will instantly attract inquiring minds and stimulate reluctant readers. Well, can you imagine giving a book to a 3-year-old now? Just as ducks and swans. They go. So it was a different world. I think this is 1970, so my childhood, But,
So talk a little bit more about the materials that you use in your nests as opposed to what you might find. I mean, I suppose a nest can be made of anything, can't it, really? And the different species to obviously build incredibly different kinds of nests.
Yeah, so I've done a lot of research on and learnt a lot on why they use certain things. And a lot of it is just because that bird lives in a particular environment where moss grows, or that
Sure.
bird lives where dried leaves are. So it's not something, this kind nest here, I call them imaginary nests because they're sort of got 3 or 4 species traits within them. I suppose I'm kind of pushing the boundaries for aesthetics sometimes as an artwork. But mainly I start with a paper cup. I use mulberry or rice paper and sort of start using, the best thing I found to use is mushroom shaped darning mushrooms.
Oh yeah.
They're perfect.
Yeah.
So I start by making a paper cup, and once that's dry, I normally stain it with oat gall ink or something like that. And then I start layering moss and wool and twigs and all sorts of things, using the remnants from nests that have been abandoned from birds the previous spring. And I just start building it up. The bird would do it the other way round, obviously. The bird would build from the outside to the middle, and then they use their bodies to shape the cup. So the cup size will always be the size of the bird.
Yeah.
But I use a darning mushroom. So I sit twisting it around.
Well, if you tried to do it with your own body, it would be quite large.
No.
Yeah.
So I don't know if you can see the paper. It's got, hang on.
I think I can.
It's probably got a lot of moss on it. But so the cup. Yeah. And then I try and keep threading the right way. But I don't do like one thing. I try and do it as if the bird's doing it. So they would just keep picking up and adding bits. And then I keep sort of rolling it in my hands and just till it feels pleasing.
Yeah.
And then normally add a feather because, they will add feathers to their nests.
Yeah.
And this one's got the wire around as a sort of statement. So it really is just natural materials, but I'm really careful that I collect them from. So the moss, if you walk through, it's not woodland, we've got like these sort of copses that are quite wet, and you get that moss that the blackbirds kicked up. So
yes,
it's already been disturbed. So I only collect that kind of moss. And the wool is from the sheep shearing when they sheared the sheep, or pull it off the fences.
Yeah.
Where the sheep have rubbed it off. The feathers, a lot of the feathers, I collect them. So I've got small ones from blue tits, or I use the chicken feathers and shape them down. The wires probably come from the garden, especially if it's rusty.
Yeah.
Nothing like a nice bit of rusty wire. And the roots, this one's got, these are not, and twigs are too fragile. You see the root, these are roots, because roots are much stronger.
Sure.
So they come from plants that have died in the garden, like rosemaries and things, and then I just save all the roots. So I've just got piles of stuff I save, and when I see a nice bit of wood or something, I've just got kind of a stock now of natural finds, bits of eggshell, anything, And
do you think there are different, and we talked about the avocet not really building a nest, and that seems to be true of a lot of larger wading birds. They don't seem to bother a bit.
The birds are hatched. I can't think what the term is. There's a specific term. So they're hatched a lot older.
Okay.
Because they have to just go.
Yeah.
Whereas like a chicken hatches the chicken hatch is the same, so you get fluffy chicks.
Yeah.
But like a great, they're almost just like little fetuses.
Yeah. So they need the nest, in other words.
Yeah, whereas all they need, the other birds, all they need is a shape to hold the egg while they sit on it, and as much camouflage as possible. And once the hatchling has dried, they leave the nest immediately. But I did see another nest. They'd stuck it right in the middle of the shingle, right in the middle of the dogs and the people.
Yeah.
And they roped her off, and I did get a close-in view under her, and I could see seaweed sticking out and bits of dry kind of twig. So she had collected a few
something
bits. Yeah. So I've done that.
Because we have a lot of egrets on the estuary here. And of course they nest in trees. I mean,
they nest like herons.
It's really weird. Yeah, right. The herons and the egrets, they really don't look like they could hang on. They've got the wrong kind of feet, but they're up there.
And their nests are quite sort of...
Yeah, quite messy.
And twigs all bunged together. Yeah.
Do you... I think the reason I was struck by your work was that it seems to take a very interesting... tread a very interesting line between being an artwork, so it's yours, it's invented, it's using, materials that you've chosen, which may not necessarily be found in the natural world, and yet it also pays, as you say, it pays homage to these extraordinary structures that birds are capable of building with what must be immense patience.
I think it takes a week on average. Yeah.
And I think that what you're doing is drawing attention to the extraordinary building work that they're doing, whilst at the same time keeping your own voice as an artist in there.
Yeah. So I have got other kind of works that I do in response that are more there's two-dimensional works. So I've done quite a few cyanotype prints of real nests, and then worked into them with sgraffito to make them look, to change the concept. I've got I think I sent you the walking maps that I do.
You did.
As well.
Yeah.
But they all connect. I've made wasp nests as well, because I want to really get people to think twice about murdering wasps every 5 minutes. Their structures are just incredible and made from paper.
Yeah.
But even having an exhibition where, to be honest, the most common thing that people say to me is that a real nest. Which to me, I think, that's why I've stuck it on a plinth for, I go, no, if it was real, it would fall apart after a while, in the weather, you don't see them. So I've already got their attention.
Exactly, yeah.
They go, oh, is that what they... And then what I'm hoping is that by being attracted, because it's an artwork and it's beautiful, but then it bounces this idea that I didn't know nests looked like that. I didn't know they could do this. Oh, they're really in my hedge. Oh, I need to look after, and that it should do this. But that the art, and I just adore doing this, sparks that off, and it goes like full circle. So, yeah.
Yeah, because unless you see it, if you don't, most of the time you don't see nests up front, because they're largely made to be in places that you don't see for obvious reasons.
Yeah.
But when you do, and sometimes we have a big rookery here at home, and
nice.
Quite often they will build their nests early, and then we'll have a late storm, and so the nests will fall, and they fall whole. so you can
Yeah.
see how these
Oh, well,
structures
can you, if
survive.
they do, can you take a picture and send
I
me?
will. I promise I will. If I,
Because I've never seen a rook close up.
yeah, they're
They
quite
say,
they're quite messy.
yeah,
They're not as extraordinary as some of the structures that the smaller birds tend to use.
no, but they
Um,
are different in that they reuse their nests. So they
that's
just
right.
add
They
to.
do. Yeah.
Whereas the little birds, or what they're called passerines, the perching birds, they just make them once.
Yeah.
And then if you want to find a nest, you need to look just as the leaves have fallen.
Which is when they're being abandoned.
And they'll be, well, no, they would have abandoned them in the late spring, summer.
Yeah.
But you don't see them. And I literally walk. So I'm walking along the hedgerow and I'm like this. And then and then I'll spot it. And then in we go with the dogs. Sometimes I can't reach them. I mean, I know because of research that they do not reuse their nests.
Right.
And by the end of the winter, they will probably have fallen and there'll be just bits hanging. So I certainly wouldn't ever consider taking anything that was a bird would come back to.
I wonder if there's any correlation between birds that mate for life, like rooks.
Yeah.
And therefore they kind of build a home when they do come back to it.
Yeah. I don't know.
As opposed to birds who just mate transiently and therefore they have transient homes. I have no idea, but it feels like that feels plausible.
Yeah, it's a huge world out there to learn about. Yeah, but I mean, I do like other things. The eggs fascinate me, but then they're a natural made architectural object as well, which is fascinating. So they're kind of my bread and butter work. So the egg vessels, so I sort of get free range goose eggs and get the other half to blow them for me. Then we have cake.
Yes, perfect. Yes.
Yeah, and then the thing is with the goose eggs, they're much thicker, so you can really work with them.
Yeah, yeah.
And then I kind of stain them with the natural inks that I make, or I've bought in natural inks, and remove the tops and bottoms, and they seem to go down quite well.
Presumably it's quite an absorbent surface, or is it? Is it permeable?
Yeah, because there's air holes where the chicks would breathe.
Okay. Yeah.
Which I didn't realise, because I kept thinking you kind of would put the colour on. So I was using a lot of oat gall ink or the black Japanese sumi ink. And then you'd think it had taken it, and then you would go to clean it a bit and it would all wash off again. So it needs layers, and I keep rubbing it back. So you're literally putting a very faint stain on each layer.
Yeah.
And it's quite disappointing when you've got these really nice dribbly marks.
Then they all.
And then you think, well, just clean it off, and it all comes off. So but they're absorbent. But the goose eggs are really good because they're matte.
Yeah.
Whereas the chicken and duck eggs are
they're shiny.
This is why painting them was a nightmare, because they're so shiny. You keep putting a layer of paint on. So I was using gouache to get a base colour that I could then, and it would just slip off again. So but
good. We should probably sort of draw this to a close. But tell me a bit more about your exhibition then that's coming up. When is it open?
The Norfolk one is April the 1st to the end of April. It's in I think it's called the Simon Aspinall Education Centre, which, if anyone knows the Cly Reserve, it's a big glass modern building, and this it was opened by David Attenborough, this particular bit, so it's a lovely open space. It is an educational exhibition, so it's not a selling exhibition as such.
Sure.
So it will be laid. It might sometimes have to move to one side for something else to happen in the room.
Yeah.
So I'm like,
yeah.
So yeah, and it'll be for a month, and I think I'm doing an artist talk at some point. All the details are on the Norfolk Wildlife Trust website.
Yeah, we'll link it. We'll put a link on it.
And I'm also doing some workshops where I kind of introduce people to natural art materials and making natural tools and things. So again, linking them with nature. So that's happening. Yeah. And then next year, I'm going to do Minsmere, which is my local patch.
Great.
So I'm now like, yeah, this is it. I'm just going to make my own huge nest in the garden and hide.
Well, it's an obvious next step, it seems to me.
Yeah, no.
Right. Well, it's been lovely talking to you.
Oh, thank you so much.
I normally we would open up to conversation. We've had a conversation, which is great. But if I'll encourage people to put questions for you.
Yeah, I mean, the reason I can't be there is because I'm actually going to Norfolk to talk about the last final bit. So.
Yeah. Good excuse. Yeah.
Bird watching.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm happy to answer any questions. So.
Great. All right.
Thanks so much.
Thank you very much, Nicola.
I've enjoyed it.
Get to know a bit more about your work. It's great.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Okay. Thanks.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye-bye.